Hi again, Mark here from TalkingBass.net. In the past few weeks, I've been looking at some runs using the major pentatonic scale. This week, I'm going to add some chromatic notes into the mix to add a little more spice in there. The workbook for this lesson can be downloaded from TalkingBass.net. Just follow the link in the info below, and remember that there's a whole host of different bass resources available on the site. Just sign up for free to gain access to the members area, where you'll be able to access the practice room, the forum, and much more. So go check it out. So the major pentatonic pattern that we've been using over the past few lessons actually covers a couple of positions, and we have this little position shift with the pinky or little finger, and the pattern looks like this. Okay, so that's the position. That's the pattern that we've been looking at. So if you need a refresher on that pattern, or you don't know what I'm talking about, just go over the past few lessons, and that'll give you a foundation to work from. Now today we're going to be looking at adding chromatic notes in there. So chromatic notes are notes outside of the key. So let's say that we're in the key of C major, okay, simple key. We'd be using the C major scale as our palette of notes. So that's the notes C, D, E, F, G, A and B. Chromatic notes would be any notes outside of that. So we would have C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, or any of the equivalent flats. So all of those notes, they would be chromatic. Now, when people start playing an instrument or start studying music, they always tend to think that the chromatic notes are the notes that you want to avoid, especially if you were, learning to improvise. And that's actually not the case at all. You know, the chromatic notes are notes that add the little bits of spice into there. So all you need to do is learn how to use them. So one of the best ways of getting into using chromatic notes is by using them as passing notes, and that's what we're going to do today. So a passing note moves between two notes, and the useful thing about a passing note when it comes to chromatics is that we don't actually linger on them long enough for them to have any kind of nasty effects. So the best way of looking at passing notes for a pattern-based player on bass is to actually just think of them as filling in the gaps between the scale notes. So let's have a look at a few examples of that. So if we have a look at the major pentatonic scale again, so we've got the C there, we'll base it on a C major pentatonic, just run through that, C, D, E, G, A, C, so 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th fret A string, 5th fret, 7th fret D string, and then 5th fret G string, with that shift there with the 4th finger. If we wanted to add a chromatic passing note in there, a really good one to apply to the major pentatonic would be the minor 3rd there. So all we have to do is work up through the scale. So let's have a look on the A string there. We've got C, D and E. So C is the root note, D is the 2nd and E is the 3rd. What we're going to do is put a chromatic passing note between the 2nd and the 3rd. So if you look at the 2nd there, that's D, 5th fret of the A string, and the E there, 7th fret of the A string. So it's just those two notes, and all we're going to do is put a note in between them. That's it. That's all we've done. So we had two notes there, D and E, and we've just filled in the gap between them. We've just bridged that gap. Okay, so now we have C, D, D sharp, E. Okay, so 3rd fret, 5th fret, 6th fret, 7th fret on the A string. And then we could carry on up through the scale. So G, A, C. So okay, so it's not a new scale, we're still only using the major pentatonic, it's just that we're using the chromatic passing note in there between the 2nd and the 3rd just for a little bit of spice, okay? So it's what we call a melodic device, so we're just adding it in there, okay? So I'll introduce more chromatic passing notes as we work through the lesson, but to begin with, let's just try a run using that particular passing note. So the run is going to sound like this. Okay? So the first part of this run, we simply come up the major pentatonic scale, including that chromatic passing note, just as we played in the previous exercise. So if we begin at the C there, 3rd fret of the A string, and then we just come up through them. So we've got 3rd fret, 5th fret, 6th fret, 7th fret on the A string, so C, D, D sharp, E. Then we move on to the D string, G and A, 5th fret and 7th fret, and then we get up to the C there, 5th fret of the G string. So, okay, so that's the rhythm. And I'm using the first finger there on the C and then shifting position to the D, okay? So unlike the previous lessons where we used the pinky to slide, we're actually using the index finger there to come up straight away. So C, shift up to the D, and then you're in position for the rest of the fill. So to begin with, just get that under your fingers, okay? That first part of the run. So very slowly, 3, 4, 3, 4, and then just build up speed. For the second part of the run, we have this line. Okay, so we begin at the D, 7th fret of the G string, and then we just come down through that major pentatonic scale. So we have D, C, A, okay, 7th fret, 5th fret G string, and then 7th fret D string. And then we move back up to the C, 5th fret of the G string, and come down C, A, G, E. Okay, and that's it. So 5th fret G string, then 7th fret, 5th fret D string, and then 7th fret A string. Okay, so the whole of that line. So it's a 3, and then a 4. And I always find it helps a little to accent at the beginning of each of those groupings. So accent on the 3, and then accent on the C. Okay, so once you've got that line down, then we can just put them both together. So we have... Okay, so just begin slow and then just gradually build up speed. Okay, so just as in the previous lessons, we'll try applying that run to a basic accompaniment pattern on a C, okay? So it's just going to be C round and round, and the rhythmic pattern that I'm going to use sounds like this. Okay, it's a very simple pattern there. I'm just on a C, 3rd fret of the A string, and I'm just playing on the 1, cutting off on the 2, then I've got a little ghost note in there, and then just a hit on the 3 and the end of 3. So, and then I cut off on 4. Okay, so 3, 4. Okay, so just practice playing that round and round and round, and then we'll add the run. So now I'll play round and round on that pattern, and I'll add the run on bar 4. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you can hear how it works in there. Now let's try moving that run around to start on some different root notes. That way we'll be able to apply it to the chord progression just as in the previous lessons. So if we were to play that from an F, 1st fret of the E string there, all we have to do is move that pattern just to start on that 1st fret. So I'm not going to run through every note here. This is all written down there in the lesson material, so just download that and you can work through it step by step. But it's a lot easier if you can just visualize that pattern and then just shift it down. Okay, so I'm moving down onto this F and we have the following. Okay, see, I've just moved that pattern down there. Okay, and then we can shift it to the G. So start on the 3rd fret of the E string and we have the following. Okay, so just try shifting it around the neck just like that. So just as in the previous lessons, let's try applying the run to a chord progression. So the chord progression is going to be C, F, C, G. So 1, 4, 1, 5 in C major. So C major 1 bar, F major 1 bar, C major 1 bar, G major 1 bar, okay? So the rhythmic pattern is just going to be exactly the same one that we've just used in the previous exercise, as in, but we'll work through the progression. So the progression sounds like this. 2, 3, 4. F, C, G, C, F, C, G. Okay, so just get that under your fingers, try playing through the chord progression first before you try applying the run, and then you can apply the run. So first of all, let's just try applying that run to our bar of G. So this is the fourth bar of the progression, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, C, F, C, C, F, C. Okay, so when you play the run, be sure to remember to move back to the C. Okay, so as soon as it finishes, you got to jump back to that C because that's the next chord. So that's the one part that might throw you when you first try it. Now let's try applying that run to the bar of F. So this is the second bar of the progression. So 1, 2, 3, 4, C, C, G, C, C. Okay. And lastly, let's try applying that run to both the F and the G. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, C, So that's how we can use that chromatic passing note between the second and third degrees in a run, but we can actually use any chromatic note in this way. Remember, these aren't new scales that we're making, we're just using that same old major pentatonic scale and adding the chromatic notes in there as melodic devices. Now as a tip, I'd say it's better to start by playing chromatics that lead into chord tones like the root, third and fifth, rather than into less structural notes like the second and sixth. Now, there's no right or wrong with this, it's just that when you're getting started, you'll probably find that you've got more direction and momentum in your runs if you move into chord tones rather than away from them. So that's just a little tip, just until you get used to using them. So as an example of this leading into chord tones approach, let's try a variation on that previous run by adding a chromatic passing note in between the 6th and the 5th degrees of the scale. So just before I show you the run, let's have a look at the passing note we're going to be using. So if we just run through the major pentatonic again, C, D, E, G, A, C, so that's just the bare bones major pentatonic. If you have a look at the A there and the G, so this is the 7th fret and 5th fret of the D string, that's the 6th and 5th degrees of the scale. We have the A to the G. If we want a chromatic passing note in there, again, we just fill in the gap. So we've got 7th fret to the 5th fret, so we just put the 6th fret in there. So 7th fret, 6th fret, 5th fret. So now we have A flat, G. Simple as that. So like I said, we're just filling in the gaps between the scale notes. So as I mentioned before, we're leading into a chord tone. So this time we're leading into the 5th. So remember, the chord tones for the basic C major chord would be C, E and G. Okay, so root, 3rd and 5th. So we're leading into the 5th. Okay, so A flat, G. 7th fret, 6th fret, 5th fret on the D string. So now let's have a look at our new run. So it's going to sound like this. Okay, so very, very similar to the previous run, but now we've got that new little move in there from the A down to the G. If we split this run into two parts, the second part is exactly the same as the previous run. So we don't need to run through that. But the first half of it is where the slight variation is. So we begin on a C, so C, 3rd fret of the A string, then we come up, D, D sharp, E, just as in the previous run, but then we play the A flat, G that we've we've just worked through. So C, D, D sharp, E, A flat, G. So 3rd fret, 5th fret, 6th fret, 7th fret, A string, 7th fret, 6th fret, 5th fret, D string. And the rhythm. Okay, so again, I'm using the first finger, the index finger there for the shift. So we begin on the first finger, shift with the first finger, so C to the D, and that sets us up in position. Now the fingering that I use for the remainder of this run is first finger, second finger, and then I'm actually going to use the 4th finger. So we've got a 1, 2, 4 fingering for that D, D sharp, E. Then I bar across with the 4th finger to catch that A. And then 2nd finger, 1st finger for the A flat and the G. Now there's many different ways that you could play this. Some of you might just use the first 3 fingers, you know, and play it like that. But for a nice clean technique, I just keep that hand there in that 1, 2, 4 over 3 frets position. Okay, so if you find it too difficult to bar with that 4th finger there, just, you know, you can just stick to the first 3 fingers. But I would try to get used to using the 4th finger in that way. It'll build up the strength in that 4th finger, and, you know, it just makes your technique a lot neater, okay? So that's the first part of this run. So as I mentioned, the second half of the run is exactly the same as in the first run. So we had D, C, A, okay, that little group of 3, and then C, A, G, E, that group of 4. Okay, so 7th fret, 5th fret, G string, 7th fret, D string, and then 5th fret, G string, then 7th fret, 5th fret, D string, 7th fret, A string. Okay, so that's the second part. So if we add those two together, and then just build up speed. Okay. So let's just work through the same exercises that we did with the previous run, starting with our basic C accompaniment pattern, okay? So we're just on a C, and then we put the run in on the 4th bar. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 3. 2, 3. And now we can try playing that run on the F and the G in our chord progression. So I won't bother running through all the notes again. They're all there in the lesson material. So I'll just go straight in with the chord progression, and I'll run round and round. So the first time I'll just place it on the G, second time I'll place it on the F, and third time I'll place it on the F and the G. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. C, F, C, C, C. Now both. Now finally, let's try adding another cool little chromatic passing note between the second and the root note, so the second degree of the scale and the root note. So if we were to have a look at the C there, 3rd fret of the A string, that's the root note. We have the second there, the D. So all we need is to fill in that gap, which gives us that, the C sharp or the D flat, okay? So using the tip that I told you about before, we want to move towards the chord tone, so lean into the chord tone. We want to go from the D down to the C. So we have that nice lead into the root note, okay? So D, D flat, C. And in the run that we're going to play, we're going to be playing it up the octave. So we're going to have D, D flat, C, up there at the 7th fret, 6th fret, 5th fret of the G string. Okay, so that's the new chromatic passing note that we're going to look at. This chromatic movement has a lot of tension and release because of that move of a half step into the root note. So this can be a great little chromatic device that might not seem so obvious on the face of it. The flattened second seems so out of place in a major key, but it can be really, really effective. Just be careful how you use it. So let's try a run using all of the chromatics that we've covered so far, and the run's going to sound like this. Okay, so we begin this run exactly the same as the previous one by starting on the C, and then we run up. So we have C, D, D sharp, E, then A flat, G. Okay, then we move up onto the G string and play the D, D flat, C. So we have 7th fret, 6th fret, 5th fret. So when we add that to the run. And for those notes at the top, again, I'm using that 4th finger, 2nd finger, 1st finger fingering. So, and then we simply shift up to play the D, D sharp, E. So this is the same move that we played between the 2nd and the 3rd down here, but we're playing it up the octave, okay? And that's a very, very popular move in bass fills. So, okay, so that D, D sharp, E up the octave. So, all together very slowly. So we move straight into that D after coming down to the C, okay? And you can see there with the fingering, I had 4th finger, 2nd finger, 1st finger, as I just mentioned, and then I shift with the 1st finger up to the D. And then just play with the 2nd and 4th fingers again. So, 4th finger, 2nd finger, 1st finger, 1st finger, 2nd finger, 4th finger. Okay, and that's the whole run. So, then you just build up speed. So, as with the previous runs, let's run through that set of exercises. So, we'll begin with just the basic C comp pattern, and we'll put it in there on the 4th bar. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. 3. 2. 3. And now let's try transposing that run to the F and the G. So on an F it would sound like this. And on the G. Okay, and then we can just apply them to the chord progression. So, once again, all the way through the chord progression, first time on the G, second time on the F, and then the third time on them both. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. C, F, C, 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 G, C, C. Okay? So you can see that just from those few pentatonic runs, how we can make use of chromatics without it sounding too odd and out of place. If you listen to any of the Motown bass lines of James Jamerson, you'll hear these kind of lines all over the place. And the cool thing about adding them to major pentatonic scales is that they fall under the fingers fairly easily. So check out the lesson workbook over at talkingbass.net, sign up for all those bass goodies, and I'll see you later.